Null is an interesting thing. This is a missing data. It's not a value. There are things you should know about null. Specifically, null is not equal to null. In fact, null is not equal to anything because no data is not equal to something. It's not even equal to itself. So you can't use an equals operator with it. Although it is syntactically correct, it is always false. And there are some uses for getting back a false in an expression sometimes. isNull and isNotNull are the comparison operators that you would use with null. So if you do the select found when null is null, and we run that, you'll find out that that returns a true, whereas the other one returns a false. So if you look down here, it returned found, which is basically a true, because I'm selecting found where null is equal to null. Now, null is odd also in the sense that this is one of the things that has a lot of differences between different databases. The way that Oracle treats null when it's in a string is different than the way DB2 treats null, is different than MySQL, is different than Postgres. So each one of these different databases, if you're to port code between them, you're going to have subtle things that go on around null. In Oracle, checking for null is the NVL function. In standard SQL, it is coalesce. And I believe these days Oracle supports coalesce, although I did Oracle stuff for so long, I keep still using NVL in it. So coalesce, okay, takes, if the first parameter is null, it returns the second parameter, otherwise it returns the first parameter. So in a select statement, you can actually get it to replace values that are null with a value that you can actually use, a default value if null. So something like this will return a true, or a 2, not a true. There's the 2. Whereas if we put in a value in here, like 88, and we do coalesce and we run it, we'll find that we get the first value. So coalesce is super useful in a bunch of different contexts. And there is this null if, which is true if the value is a null. It returns the second value, which is kind of the opposite of coalesce. But, yeah. And what else about null? I don't think there's a lot else I'd like to say about it other than pointing out the fact that if you have null values in a table, they are never indexed because they're not data. And consequently, if you go and search a table for something is null, this usually results in a full table scan unless you've got some other criteria that can use an index, which can be extremely slow. Now, the ramifications of something like that is if you have null values and you put them in a check constraint, you'll notice that all the time when I've had constraints between tables, I always have a thing on the table that says not null to prevent null values. If you do a check constraint, which takes one table and does a select on another whenever you do an insert, and that's a null, then the destination table is going to have a full table scan. So you think you're inserting a row, but you're inserting a row that results in a select that does a full table scan on 100 million rows, and you go, why won't my insert run? It's taking 15 minutes every insert. Check your check constraints and see if you've managed to leave off a case with a null value in it.